Hello, everyone. Once again, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on what time zone you're signing into this call. Once again, my name is Akin Ifeanyi Agunbiade, and I'll be moderating today's session. So, welcome to the maiden edition of the AI Forward webinars from Afrique AI Lab. So, a bit about the AI Forward webinars, Afrique AI, and also our key partner for today's session, Pan African Center of AI Ethics. The first of the AI Forward webinars are it's an idea, okay? It's an idea to create a series of monthly conversations where we bring together AI enthusiasts, AI practitioners, AI scholars to share insights and to discuss and receive, let's say, the state of the art intelligence on the AI field from an industry expert. Today, that person being Confidence Amuda. And why the AI fraud webinars in the first place? To answer that, I'd have to give a bit of a background into why Afrique AI exists in the first place. So Afrique AI exists to what you might call fill a gap in what we've seen as Africa's AI ecosystem, where there's a need to integrate certain key functions to build Africa's AI ecosystem, integrating things like skills development, research, innovation, governance, and ecosystem building to ensure that Africa is not left behind in the global AI race. And like I said, this session would not be possible without the support of one of our key partners, Pan African Center for AI Ethics. And I can see that the founder, Kingsley Wadara, is on this call with us. And the Pan African Center has been doing really great work in this area. I mean, some of us are probably familiar with their AI summer schools. And just one of the major initiatives that they have. Pan African Center has a mission to promote ethical AI by empowering communities, influencing policy, supporting research, and building capacity across Africa. So you see that there is a significant overlap between what we want to do and what Pan African Center already does. But I mean, one tree doesn't make a forest. So this sector needs all the effort and all hands on deck to build it. And we have someone here who has actively contributed to building that space, and we're going to be learning from him for the next, let's say, 1 hour plus. And with that, I will proceed to introduce our speaker for today, Confidence Amuda. I will read his bio, and then we jump right into it. But before I go, that I mean, Confidence is someone that he doesn't know me personally, but I follow his work, and I really admire what he does with Prevalence Advisory. And some of you here are probably also familiar with his work also. So let me not bore you anymore. Let me just go into why Confidence is eminently qualified to speak at today's session. So first, Confidence Amuda is a technology and compliance lawyer with over 8 years of experience at the nexus of data protection, technology, and law. He holds an LLM from Robert Gordon University of Aberdeen and multiple professional credentials, including Fellow of Information Privacy, FIP, CIPM, and CIPPE. He is a Nigerian licensed data protection officer. As the founder and managing partner of Privalex Advisory, Confidence guides technology-driven organizations in embedding compliance by design frameworks into business operations, balancing innovation with practical compliance and risk mitigation. His strategic counsel has supported cross-border commercial transactions, privacy program rollouts, digital transformation projects across Africa. Confidence also serves as data protection officer for Warwickshire College Group, one of the UK's largest further education providers, where he oversees data governance, compliance strategy, and privacy by design implementation across multiple campuses. He has led robust DPIAs, transfer impact assessments, and advised on complex international data transfers under the UK GDPR, EU GDPR, and global privacy regulations. In 2025, Confidence authored the Guide Compliance Playbook. Now, for those who are probably not familiar, the Guide is a new regulation that just came into force last weekend. Yeah, just came into force last weekend, which replaces the previous NDPR, which is subsidiary regulation to the NDPA. So he has already authored a whole playbook on compliance with this regulation that runs like I think it runs over 120 pages. Yeah. His compliance playbook is a practical roadmap for Nigerian institutions adapting to the NDPA and the guide itself. He has published extensively on AI, privacy, and global data governance, making him a sought-after advisor in both the UK and global digital economy. He also provides training to fellow professionals in data protection and compliance, having mentored over 30 privacy practitioners through practical workshops and one-on-one coaching programs. Like, I mean, as they say in law, recipes are locator. His bio speaks for itself. So we are definitely in for a really educative and insightful experience with confidence today. So, um, confidence, if you have anything to say before we jump into the session.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much for that kind introduction. So honored and happy to be here. Thank
you. Okay. Um, so I would just go straight into it. So like the topic for today's session is governing AI in the age of deepfakes and data leaks. But before we jump right into that, just for the sake of our audience, let's make this as simple as possible. Confidence. Um, what? How would you describe a deepfake? Or if I were 5 years, I wanted to explain what a deepfake is to me. How would you describe a deepfake to me? Yeah, hello, confidence. Did you get me?
Oh, pardon me. I was already speaking. I had no idea that I was still on mute. So okay, I will start by just we understand the general saying that which saying is believing, yeah. So there is this expectation that the eyes, which is one of your our core senses, does not usually is one means of being sure that things are the way they are. But in this with the technological advancement, we are currently faced with a situation or with a risk where seeing might not be believing, because we are dealing with we are in an era where with the use of artificial intelligence, with the use of artificial intelligence, particularly deep learning techniques, um, people are able to generate and also manipulate both audios, videos, and images to be able to create something which is false, to be able to create something which is false, which just from the mere sight of it appears completely to be real. But this is they do this by making use of sometimes synthetic data, sometimes making use of deep learning techniques, like I mentioned, to generate things that are fake, but by the mere look of it appears to be real. So in this situation, you could see that that general saying that seeing is believing cannot is not actually the case. I will give an instance. I will give an instance. I don't know if some of us um came across this during the outset of the Russian-Ukraine war. There was a video circulating. There was a video circulating on social media where the Ukraine President Zelensky was urging Ukrainian forces to surrender. Now, this video, of course, which is false, was done with the use of was a deepfake, what was done with the use of artificial intelligence. So it's basically where with the use of AI, machine learning, unreal photos, images, and audios are being used by sometimes for with ill intent to be able to manipulate our reality.
Okay, thank you very much for that comprehensive explanation. Like, building on what you said about the example from the Russia-Ukraine war, where obviously that kind of video, that kind of deep fake, let's imagine that it had the intended effect. That would have probably been to dampen the morale of those soldiers and probably tilt the outcome of maybe a particular battle at that time in favor of Russia. So building on that, because how would you say, what do you think are the major risks of deep fakes in the next 3 to 5 years in Africa or Nigeria? What would you say that might be the major risks of deep fakes becoming a lot more mainstream?
Okay, so I think deep fakes would be dangerous to our society in certain key areas. One is political. We understand the fragile nature of Nigeria as a society. Let me Nigeria as a case study. We understand the fragile nature of a Nigeria political terrain. Now let's bring this. Now imagine a situation where, just like what was done in Ukraine, I imagine a situation whereby a video of a prominent political figure is being doctored with the use of deep fake, especially in a country where especially in a country where there is very strong tribal and ethnic affiliations. Now imagine a deep fake by, let's say, a prominent political figure belonging to a particular ethnic group or a particular tribe circulating in the media, maybe making comments or making insightful and derogatory comments about another tribe. Now imagine what that will do to the already fragile political state, to the already fragile political and ethnic state of Nigeria. So that is one. And also we understand how our, in as much as we say that our political institutions are still, they're still very much developing, they are nowhere near where we expect them to be. Now these deepfakes and these deepfake and these tools can also be used and manipulated by malicious actors to either to undermine electoral processes, and also further increase the like I said, increase the already bad ethnic tensions that exist in the country. That is one. Another area is in the case of identity theft and fraud. I'm sure most of us saw the movie by I think Kemi Adetiba, that was to Kill a Monkey. You see briefly how they captured that movie is really interesting because how they captured how with the use of deep fake fraudsters were able to defraud unsuspecting people to the tune of millions of dollars. Now imagine where you see a video just like it was accurately captured in that movie. You see a video of a loved one calling you that they are currently stranded somewhere, or that they are currently maybe they've been kidnapped and the kidnapper is asking for ransom. Now imagine if this plays out in real time, if this plays out in reality, how bad actors, both kidnappers, fraudsters, could be able to generate these videos and use it to further dupe, scam, and exploit the unsuspecting members of the public. Now, another aspect where this area with this deepfake can also is also very risky and dangerous is there is this term called the liar's dividend. In, let's say, for instance, once we are now accustomed and used to the fact that, let's say, that videos out there are doctored, that seeing is no longer believing. This can be relied on both by the political elites. This can be relied on both by the political elites to even dismiss to even dismiss videos that are actually real, tagging them deepfake, AI generated, and all that. So that is another risk. And also with the increasing data breaches that we have been experiencing, with data exploitation. Data exploitation is another risk, because we know that artificial intelligence and machine learning are built on data. Data is the fuel that keeps this engine running. A typical example is the Cambridge Analytical case that happened in 2018, where data that included Facebook profiles of people were harvested and were used to make targeted ads. Now, imagine if that situation, if this data that is scattered all over the internet, both those that is as a result of breach and also those that is as a result of our low digital literacy level, because you see most times online where people publish sensitive details about them online, sensitive details, both images and all that. Now imagine if all these are scraped, fed into machine learning algorithms, how that can be used to generate both fake audios, fake videos, fake videos of unsuspecting members of the public. So all these, both the political aspect, the economic aspect, and also how it will further fuel data exploitation. All these are the risks that I see that will be prevalent in not just Nigeria, but Africa at large. Thank you.
Okay, I mean, thank you for that comprehensive breakdown. And I was making notes, and I'm glad you mentioned the issue of liars dividend, because I mean, it feels like a reverse consequence of deepfakes, where people can escape accountability because of general skepticism, like you said, when seen is no longer believing. And you also made mention of the issue of how it could undermine electoral processes. I know you're probably aware that you already heard the news that INEC here in Nigeria is setting up an AI division towards the 2027 elections. Now, it remains to be seen what form or what steps they are going to take in concrete steps they're going to take, but that feels like a step in the right direction. So just leads to my next question now. Do you see any indications that African nations, not just Nigeria, are making moves to enact policy that might help to mitigate or prevent the worst case scenarios that you described in respect to the use of deepfakes?
Okay. Personally, I am of this belief that what we need is good enforcement of already existing laws and policies, and not introduction of new laws. So there are, if what I'm in essence, we have currently existing laws both in Nigeria and other African countries, where either it can be amended or tweaked in a way to capture the misuse of deepfake technologies, or even in its current state already captures deepfake technologies. But first of all, in the area of amendments, I would say that African countries they've currently started taking steps towards the regulation of the misuse of this technology, although even if it is uneven. One notable example was the amendment done by Uganda in 2022, where they amended their Computer Misuse Act to explicitly ban distributing of false audio and video. That false audio and video that already captures deepfake. Also, if we look at our electoral laws, both in Nigeria and I suppose other African countries, it's most of these laws already penalize the distribution of fake news, that will undermine electoral processes. So if deepfake technology is used in the generation and distribution of these false images or videos, that will definitely be addressed under electoral laws, if the purpose of it is to undermine electoral process. We also have our cybercrime statutes that exist in most African countries, that already punish identity theft and fraud. And if a malicious deepfake is used for the purposes of identity theft or fraud, that is already captured under existing cybercrime legislation. Then we come to the data protection, data protection aspect of it. Most African countries already have data protection legislation. We have that in Nigeria, that of Kenya, and the rest. And with the definition of personal data in these statutes, already captures photos, biometric data, and sensitive personal data as personal information. So what this means is that if someone's image or voice is being used without a lawful basis for the purposes of generating either a fake photo or a fake video, that is already addressed under existing privacy legislation. So in essence, what I'm saying is that we currently have existing legislations, even if we don't have specific legislation that was enacted for the purposes of addressing deepfake technologies, but we already have pieces of legislations that if they are effectively implemented, addresses deep fake technology. Now, on a continental level, we see that there is there has been move currently being done by the African Union. This was something that was done, I think, sometime in 2024, where the African Union endorsed the continental AI strategy that emphasizes ethics, human rights, and risk mitigation. So, because ethically, so that in essence is saying that artificial intelligence should be deployed and used ethically and should respect existing human rights. Deepfake technology, when used maliciously, undermines these provisions of the AI strategy. So in summary, both on a national level, we already have existing legislations which, although not in name, already addresses aspects of malicious use of deepfake technology. And on a continental level, there are currently efforts is currently in place to ensure ethical development and adoption of AI in Africa.
Okay, thank you very much, Confidence. So there's something that I would just like to get your thoughts on also. I mean, when we're dealing with, let's say, real news or real information, in most cases, it comes from accounts or from people you can hold accountable. So let's say there's a politician goes for a rally and he says something, he actually says it. It's going to be broadcast on traditional media. But when people who want to create deep fakes, they usually do this under the cover of some degree of anonymity and then distribute this widely. So if you wanted to sanction a television station now for broadcasting some hateful speech, you know the address, you know the directors, you can just go hold them responsible. But when it comes to deepfakes, because like there's usually some malicious intent. So whoever is creating them actually wants to avoid accountability. So in that context, how do you think that you've explained to us that there are existing laws, right, that can be used to curb this practice, but in practice, what would enforcement look like? Considering the fact that deepfakes are usually created under the cover of some degree of anonymity.
Okay, so I think this is an aspect that still requires development in a development, because I don't think with the special nature of, you accurately highlighted, with the special nature of this technology and the intent behind those who make malicious use of it. They operate under the cover of anonymity, and our laws as they currently exist might not address this. So what I would advise is for there to be either a amendment to existing laws or introduction of either new laws or new regulations that would mandate some form of built-in safeguards, because this deepfake technology is being developed by AI systems. It's being developed by AI systems. So if we have laws in place or directives in place, that I will go ahead to advise some of them that mandate some form of built-in safeguards that would ensure traceability, of where the deepfake originated from. Then I think that would address this issue. For instance, I think one jurisdiction that comes to mind is China. So I think currently in China is currently making move to ensure that uh, images and videos that are generated or outputs from AI are accurately labeled. So if we have regulations or directives that mandates these AI systems that are being used to generate these false videos and audios to embed some form of metadata, that even if it is not, there are two ways to do this. You can brand it, make it visibly and overt. You can brand it, make it visibly and overt that this output is as it was generated using AI technology, or they can embed some form of metadata on that particular output that might not be visible to the ordinary eye when you just look at it, but can be discovered and traced to where it was generated during investigation. So I think if that is implemented, one, and also if there is some form of platform engineering, if there is a collaboration with these social media networking sites, there is a collaboration with these social networking sites to ensure that the spread of deepfake outputs are being limited and can be taken down. We already have that existing. For extremist contents. We know that if you post some extremist comments on platforms like X and the rest, these social media platforms can pull it down once it is being flagged. So if that can also be implemented, so beyond being able to trace the origin of this technology, if there is a collaboration with these social media networking platforms for deepfake outputs to be removed once it is being flagged, I think that would help with enforcement.
Okay, thank you very much. Like, I'm building on the last point you made about collaborating with social media sites. Um, it does bring to mind another issue, because where we give governments the power to collaborate with social media sites or any kind of platform, internet-based platform, there's always a risk that it can be abused. I mean, for instance, I know that, for instance, we have the NITDA code for internet intermediaries. We have present the Provisions for Terrorism Act that gives government agencies the power to demand information. Okay, so this will probably be one of those laws that gives them the power maybe to intervene or to access or to decrypt the identity of people who use anonymity to spread deepfakes and cause tension or stoke tribal or ethnic tensions in Nigeria or any other part of the world that has similar laws. That leads to my next question. How do we ensure that on one hand we do what we need to do, curb malicious use of deepfakes, without, on the other hand, undermining basic freedom of expression, freedom of opinion. Because a person could create a deepfake just to parody someone, no intent, just to, like, some of us might remember maybe like I think it was in the Jonathan era, where there were lots of funny videos parodying his presidency. Now, those were just normal, like normal everyday animation. They were not deep fakes. But imagine a world where someone uses a deep fake to parody the incumbent president or any other government official or any other private person. No malice, but these kinds of powers could easily be used to stifle freedom of expression. So how do we balance that? How do we balance responsible use of power to curb malicious use of deepfakes without compromising freedom of expression and freedom of opinion?
All right, thank you. Yeah, you accurately captured it that not all deepfake technology, not all AI generated content is bad. You understand? Like I'm sure virtually all of us here have used AI, one form of AI or the other. So it's being used for both for creative, educational, and like you said, satirical content. Outright, there is the danger that in a bid to regulate, the misuse, there is the risk of stifling free flow of expression, freedom of expression, which you accurately highlighted. So to me, I think that the best one, I think that one way that this can be tackled is by focusing on harmful intent. It's now focusing on the intent. So make it, those of us with legal background already understand the concept of mens rea. So if we focus on that harmful intent, and if laws and policies or directives are couched in a way that it would be narrow and intent based, and it will be narrow and intent based rather than outright, rather than making it open-ended. Because when you make laws open-ended, or if you draft laws in a way that it allows, that it's ambiguous in any way, open-ended, or it gives the government, the power to be able to interpret that law to suit the intent of whoever it is that is in the position to implement and enforce such laws. But if we focus on intent, for example, we can criminalize creating or sharing of deepfake that impersonates people to commit fraud or instant violence, rather than banning all AI generated media. So, like I said, focusing on the intent and treating it on a case-by-case basis. You understand? Treating it on a case-by-case basis while acknowledging fair use principles. Would be a way to strike a balance between protecting preventing misuse preventing misuse while also advancing and protecting freedom of expression.
And great. Now, you mentioned earlier in this session, you spoke of how our data protection laws are also one of the laws that we can leverage to curb the use of deepfakes. And you just mentioned now the criminalizing the use of deepfakes to impersonate real persons. So it guides me straight into my next question. So how would you say that we can build privacy by design to ensure that AI systems are not used for non-consensual use of people's personal images or personal data to create deep fakes, but at the same time, not curbing adoption? Because, like you said, many of us, I mean, if you use X or Twitter, you know that there are always people. Like, there's this lady I follow on Twitter who is always sharing prompts you give to Gemini, and it will create a picture of you either at a restaurant, and people have been jumping on the trend to create images of themselves in different scenarios. So those are like playful uses, like you mentioned. They're like people use these things just to have fun. So I could very easily just use another person's picture instead of mine and put it out there. So how do we implement privacy by design to ensure that people are not able to use another person's image to for impersonation or to create an impression about the person that does not exist?
All right. Okay. Thank you. I think implementing this falls this is the responsibility of both those regulator and also the developers of these systems. So to start, we understand for the purposes of those that might not understand what privacy by design means. So privacy by design essentially means that at the ideation stage of a product. So at that stage where you're thinking about the product, designing the product in your head, that you should embed that you should bake into the fabrics, into the foundation of that product, privacy and data security, so that from the point of your data collection, from the point of your designing, data collection and development, privacy and data security should be baked into that product from the beginning to the end, rather than adding privacy as an add-on. That is essentially what privacy by design means. So bringing it to this context, I think that the first thing is at that point where developers are thinking of either developing an AI system that would be deployed, that can be deployed to generate media, that they should start by, first of all, let's bring it back to the era of data protection. Let's not even go to, because let's not even move too fast to AI. Let's bring it to data protection, because we understand that data is the lifeblood of these systems. So at that point where you're designing this system, you should carry out a data privacy impact assessment. At that initial stage, you should carry out a data privacy impact assessment that will assess the entire life cycle of that product development, because AI systems have products first and foremost. That would assess the entire life cycle of that product development. It will assess the use of the system, the data it will use, how you would collect the data, how that data would travel from point A to point Z in the system. That is from the point of collection, down to the point of disposal. That is the data. You should, or as when you're visualizing this, at that point of visualization, you should be able to identify the possible risks that might be associated with this product. So, and when you're accessing and identifying those risks, misuse of that product, misuse should be one of the risks that you should highlight. So, a good and robust DPIA, a good and robust data privacy impact assessment, and AI impact assessment. You can do this together. You don't need to, if you can make it robust enough and include all of them together, and even consider the cyber part of it. So if with this robust assessment, you'll be able to assess not just the privacy implications, the data security implications. You can also assess the ethical implications of possible misuse of this product. Once you've identified the risks, the next step in a DPIA is to look within yourself. Do you already have existing controls in your system? Do you already have existing controls in your system that will address these risks? If you don't have existing controls in your system, then there might be a need to introduce additional controls, that would ensure that privacy and data security is implemented as a default feature, in your product, So you build in the safeguards against misuse. Some of those safeguards that you can think of, some of the safeguards you can think of is building in content filters. You build in content filters to block certain requests. You can build in content filters to block certain requests. You can build in safeguards in the system that prevent using the system to generate explicit or defamatory content of real people. These things with these things with a robust DPA and risk identification and effective implementation of controls, you can address these things at the development stage of the product. So like I mentioned earlier, another thing that you can also implement in the fabrics of that product is that traceability, to ensure that every output of every output from that system, that there is a form of metadata or an AI tag that is embedded in that system, that is embedded in that output, to ensure that if it is a case of malicious use, it can be traced back to the source of origin. It can be traced back to the source of origin. Some of this. And another thing which I think, I don't know how practical it may be, we can borrow from something that currently exists in direct marketing world, whereby you have do not contact registers. Do not contact registers are registers where people can opt in to prevent direct marketing companies from contacting them. So if you have something like a registry or a do not train registry, or you implement in your system giving users that control to be able to request that you don't train your system with their images, and they are also able to either consent and manage what they consent to, and what they don't consent to. Because basically, if an AI does not learn your face, if your image and likeness is not used in training an AI, is not fed into the AI, it will be difficult or next to impossible for that AI to be able to generate the image, the exact image of the person, if it was not, or if that something like that was not already fed into that system. So I feel that with these safeguards that I've mentioned, ensuring that there are some blockers, some filters, ensuring that there are traceability, carrying out a robust DPA and an AI impact assessment at the ideation stage, and identifying the risk and possible misuse. If this is implemented and followed through, not just doing it as a tick box exercise, because in practice we have discovered that some people, project managers, they feel DPA is just another bureaucracy, another checkbook that you need to do. You understand? So they don't really go back to implement the recommendations. But if you do a DPA, if the developers do the DPA, identify the risk, and go a step further to actually implement these controls, in the product, it can guard against possible misuse of their product. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Confidence. Now, while I actually remembered something I just wanted to run by you to confirm if it's an example of privacy by design in practice. So,
Okay.
I mentioned earlier that many of us, you get these prompts and you try them on your pictures to see what it looks like. So there was one that was training a while back that I tried on a picture of myself and a picture of a friend of mine. So I noticed that it worked fine for my picture and it brought out me in a particular pose. When I tried the prompt on the picture of my friend, it brought out an image of a person, but the face on that person was not my friend's face at all. And I tried second time, it still wasn't bringing out my friend's face. Same pose, but not my friend's face. And then when I asked it why, it told me that it could not do that because it would not verify that I had the consent of that person to create an image of them. I can't remember if it was ChatGPT or Gemini I was using to do this. I'm not sure. I think it was either of them. So can we say that that was an example of privacy by design?
Exactly. Yeah. That is a good example. That is a good example. So as a result of the safeguards that we already built into the system, it already prevents you from generating pictures or videos of other people that accurately depicts them without their consent. Because if that safeguard is not put in there, like no one knows your intent. You understand? No one knows your intent. In this case, it is you generating a picture of your friend. But in another case, it might be an unscrupulous actor that is trying to generate a video of someone for one malicious activity or the other. So yes, that is a very good example of privacy by design built into a system.
Okay, thank you very much. Leading to my next question. Now we've talked about, I mean, you mentioned quite interestingly the do not train or consent management. So what would you say is the role of various African stakeholders from academia, civil society to the legal community in bringing into practice all these measures that you recommended towards ensuring that deep technology is responsibly used?
Okay, so I will first of all I will start with the regulators, the policymakers and the regulators. So because regulators are the ones that would provide the enabling framework. They are the ones to set the environment where these technologies would not just be developed but will be tested. So I think the best way, because what we're looking for is a situation whereby there will be a balance will be struck between um responsible development and deployment and regulation. Responsible, so we need laws to regulate um malicious use, but we don't also want a situation where there will be too much laws that will stifle development. So that is where the regulator comes in. The regulator comes into, and what I would advise is that in terms of policy development or regulatory development, it should more of be a co-creation space. You understand? From the point where they are thinking about these policies and all that, there is a need for them to engage the tech community. There is a need for them to engage the people that actually the machine learning engineers, the AI startup companies that actually engage in day-to-day development, in the day-to-day development of these systems, because that way they will be able to develop laws and policies that actually work and not just copying maybe what is existing in Europe and America and then pasting it in Nigeria. So having that co-creation space between the regulator and the developers, it's one is one way that will ensure that these things work. So currently in the UK, the ICO is currently in the process of designing a sandbox. So I'm sure most of us understand the idea of sandbox. Sandbox is where is an environment whereby developers come in, develop and text their products, develop and text their products with in conjunction with the regulator. That is, you're not texting it in the open market. You're not texting it directly to consumers. You text it within a confined environment. You text it within a confined environment under the supervision of the regulator. That way, risks can be identified at that point. And effective measures and controls can be implemented to address those risks. So if regulatory sandboxes are set up by our regulators, by the government and our regulators, that is one way to ensure that there is co-creation, that there is a co-creation of this technology by the regulator and the developers. Another now come to academia, to the academia, we understand that research, artificial intelligence, machine learning, most of these technologies is as a result of ongoing research. So a continuous research exploring ethical and responsible means of developing, exploring ethical and responsible means of developing and deploying artificial intelligence falls is one area where the academia can help, where those in academics can help through constant research, and then education, because those that will be involved in the actual development of this product pass through the education system. So if ethical AI development, if ethical AI developments are being included in curriculums in school at that stage, so that as you are coming out of the university, you're already equipped with these skills, because you're already equipped with these skills to be able to transition easily into the workspace, to be able to transition easily into the workspace and apply these skills that you gained during this. And so I feel that there is a need with the current race for AI development. There is a need for our universities. There is a need for our universities to revisit our curriculum, especially those that work in fields like engineering, law, it's not engineering, law, computer science. They need to revisit our curriculum and update it to include aspects of this, because we can't shut our AI is not going anywhere. It is part and parcel. It has become part and parcel of us. So there is a need for us to include it in our education curriculum.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much, Confidence. So I want to close this session on a practical, this question and answer session on a practical note. You mentioned that the ICO UK is designing a sandbox. Now, I'm sure you also know that in the recently issued guide, that General Application Implementation Directive issued by the NDPC, there are provisions there as regards a sandbox, and we don't know the modalities of how it will work in practice, but the regulator, the NDPC is clearly looking towards the direction of introducing sandboxes in the data protection space, something that CBN and the SEC have already done within their own domains. And earlier in the session, I mentioned that INEC is setting up an AI division. So let's make this quite practical. 2 years from now, Nigerians will go to the polls to vote in elections, and even before that, we are going to have like elections in different states. From a personal perspective, how could these separate efforts by separate regulators, data protection, elections, how could these efforts somehow come together, or what could they do in practice if you were in a position to maybe, let's say, be the man behind the string, man behind the puppet, to ensure that these efforts are effectively utilized to ensure that in the next election cycle, we do not see an explosion of the use of deep fakes that, I mean, triggers the kind of worst case scenarios that you mentioned earlier in this session, bro. How could all these separate efforts come together to ensure that deepfakes are responsibly used towards the next elections?
Okay, thank you. I think the answer to that is already in the guide. Okay, so I think I've forgotten the exact article in guide, but the NDPC, the NDPC is now the primary body. You understand? The NDPC, in everything that involves data protection in Nigeria, everything that involves data protection in Nigeria now falls squarely on NDPC. Yes, you admitted that you mentioned that there are also sector specific aspects of this, but in terms of data protection, NDPC is the primary body in charge of enforcement of data protection legislations in Nigeria, and understanding that data is the lifeblood of these systems. Data is the lifeblood of these systems. if NDPC can actually make use of the power they have. If NDPC can actually make use of the power they have, they will be able to ensure that whatever system it is that other government agencies of the government, other agencies of the government are introducing, that there is privacy by design built into those systems. This is an area where I think NDPC can do better, because here in the UK, for instance, you could see the ICO sanctioning very, very high agencies in the government. ICO has ICO has sanctions the police department. ICO sanctions the police, imposes high fines on police. ICO has sanctioned I think, yes, ICO has sanctioned the parliament, as long as it falls under data protection. So if the NDPC can actually make use of the power it has, and ensure that these other government agencies, in this case INEC, that the tool INEC is developing, or whatever tool INEC is developing, that there is privacy by design built into that. Beyond that sanctioning, there can be a collaboration between these agencies, because yes, INEC is trying to guard against the malicious use of deepfake technology, but deepfake technology is as a use of manipulation of data. It's as a use of manipulation of data, which then falls under the jurisdiction of the NDPC. So if they can work together rather than working in silos, and independently, if first of all they can work together, collaborate effectively to ensure that they bring in their domain expertise into coming out with a robust, if it is a guidance, if it is a directive that will address this particular issue. That is one way. Then on INEC themselves, both their operations, the tools they roll out in the market, if NDPC can ensure that INEC is being held accountable to ensure that they handle and process data responsibly, that any tool that they are rolling out, that they are deploying for the purposes of election, that if there is any tool that they are deploying for the purposes of election, that there is a privacy by design built into the system. That is another way, because yes, we talk about malicious actors and all that, but we know currently in Nigeria, I keep saying it, the people that are the problem, especially when we talk about irresponsible use of data, are government agencies. Not even, yes, the private sector, yes, but the main problem are government agencies. But we have seen that NDPC is not really addressing that aspect. NDPC is more focused on the private sector. So if they can get the government sector to be in line first of all, you should ensure that your own data management practices are responsible before issuing out guidelines to members of the public against possible misuse of data. That way, you are leading by example. So in summary, if NDPC can get INEC to fall in line first, and then in terms of directive policies, they can work together instead of working independently. Instead of working in silos, they can work together, contribute their respective domain expertise into coming up with a robust directive, guideline, or subsidiary legislation that will address that issue.
Thank you so much, confidence. I mean, while you're speaking, I just had to jot down charity begins at home. So, like you said, NDPC puts so much light on the private sector, and while government actors or public actors just more or less get away. And with that, I say we are done with this part of the session. We're done with the Q&A. And honestly, I have been really blessed. And if you agree with me, I hope we can just give confidence a clap using the reactions or flowers. Or thank you very much for this wonderful session. Now, I'm guessing that you probably, members of the audience, probably have some questions. So if you have a question, you could either type it in the chat section or raise your hand and we'll give you the mic to speak. Now, once we can't take so many questions, maybe just take, let's say, 3 to 4, and then we'll move into the case studies. Now, when you sign up for this session, you received a mail with an attachment that covering some case studies that we'll be discussing in this session. So, Covenants will give his thoughts on those case studies, and also this is supposed to be a collaborative part where you also, as members of the audience, also give your thoughts on those case studies. So, let's jump into the questions now. So either type them in the chat box or raise your hand. Thank you. Okay, we have our first question from Samuel Adepoju. Samuel, thank you very much. And he says, as it stands, how do we know if a content is deepfake? Is there anything to look out for, like the telltale signs that a video or an image or an audio clip is deepfake? Do you have any thoughts on this? Confidence.
Well, I that is the problem, because like we said at the onset of this, we are in an era where seeing is no longer believing. We're in an era where seeing is no longer believing. But what I would advise, because I don't think there is any straightforward answer that I can give to you here. But what I would advise is, there are some things that you see. Let's say there are some images or some media that you see that, probably based on your own level of awareness, your own level of knowledge, and your understanding of the particular context, you could see you would have that skepticism that this shouldn't be. So in that situation, and where you see something like that, it might be worth double checking. You understand? It might be worth double checking, checking the source. You understand? The source is one thing. Maybe worth double checking, check the source. And but where the problem would come from is where we have reputable media organizations engaging in the spread of deepfake generated images. But I would advise that if you check the source and ensure that wherever this is coming from a credible source, that is one way to satisfy yourself that, yeah, there might be some credibility to this. But aside from that, and also I think there are some of these AI systems embed some form of watermark. You understand? Not all of them. Some of these AI systems embed some form of watermark. That is one way. But beyond that, I think checking the source, ensuring that whatever it is you're getting, especially when it is something that ordinarily doesn't make sense, you understand, then please check the source and satisfy yourself before joining in the distribution or believing it.
Yeah, thank you very much for that confidence. Because I mean, I totally understand. Because there was a time when you could say, okay, AI is not so good at fingers. So if you see six fingers, you know that, oh, it's not real, but it's gotten better at that. Or
Yeah.
sometimes maybe the eyes are not so clear, but now it's gotten better. So it's like the technology just keeps getting more and more accurate in its output. So which really makes it important that we have provisions of laws that mandate watermarking or metadata that informs user that okay, this is not a real image, not a real video, not a real audio clip. Because the technology just keeps whatever we have today is easily the worst version of technology. In the next 1 year, or even 1 year is even too long, honestly. In the next few months, it'll be a lot more better than whatever it is you're getting right now. So still, we're still open to if you have any more questions, you can either type them or raise your hand and speak. I'll give a minute for that before I move to the case studies.
Akin, you're muted.
Sorry, I'm sorry, I was muted. We have another question from Alalade Success asking how can we learn how to create deepfakes? I want to assume you want to create ethical deepfakes for ethical, like maybe for fun or for satire or just for your personal use, not for anything malicious. Yeah, thank you for clarifying that. So confidence, any thoughts on this?
Well, I think that there are people that are specialized in prompt engineering. I think they will be they are better placed, but it's just basically like I said, media videos and all that. They are created based on what the system has already learned. So if you're good in prompt engineering, you know the right words to use, and to nudge the AI system to be able to generate either the particular image or the particular video. Ethical, of course, because some of these systems already have built-in safeguards that if you ask them to do this, their first response to you will be to decline. Their first response there. So if their first response to you will be to decline, but if you're good in prompt engineering, I think you can play around with the words. So there's no straightforward response to that. So it's just you knowing being good with making use of prompting.
Okay. If I could also add to that, I'd also advise that, like Confidence said, you have to be good with prompting, but you also have to ensure, like you said, you are using these ethical purposes for maybe for fun. You should ensure that you avoid using generative AI systems that are not mainstream. So focus on systems like ChatGPT, Gemini, DeepSeek, Microsoft Copilot, because an example I gave earlier when I was trying to make just a playful image of a friend of mine, and one of them refused to create an image in that using that person's face. So that was an example of privacy by design. So ensure that you avoid there are many other generative AI systems that are available on the internet which do not have this kind of safeguard. So first, make sure you avoid using those ones. Stick to like the mainstream popular ones that they are not perfect, but to a much greater degree, they've implemented those vital safeguards. And also, there are accounts. I don't know which social media you use, but there are accounts that you can follow on Twitter that regularly share prompts you can use to create images. So that's a good way to like You start with the prompt that they share, use that to practice, and then with time, you can get more comfortable and what start coming up with your own unique prompts to help you to create unique deepfake images or videos. So let's any more questions. Like I said, you can either type the question in the chat section or raise your hand and we'll give you the mic. Thank you. Okay. If we don't have any more questions now, I will move to the case studies that were shared to everyone's mail when we signed up for this session. I will share my screen for that, so just give me a few seconds to set that up. Thank you. So so kindly confirm if you can see my screen. So this there are several documents, so there are several scenarios, like 2 or 3 scenarios in this document, which I will read out the contents. You can follow on your screen, and then I'll get confidence thoughts on this, and then we'll throw this to the audience for your perspectives on this. So first off, deep fake and democracy, Nigeria's elections at risk. In 2024, last year, a deepfake video of the president went viral, showing him making statements that he never made, joking about buying Chelsea, the football club. Now, he may have been lighthearted, but it showed how easily AI can twist reality. Now, as Nigeria heads towards 2027 elections, deepfake voices, images, videos could mislead voters. We've spoken about this already. Spread faster than fact checkers and erode trust in institutions. No, our discussion. What concrete legal and regulatory measures should Nigerian authorities or any African government introduce ahead of elections to ensure that deepfake content does not undermine democratic integrity? Who should enforce these measures and how do we ensure they are trusted and effective? I think confidence partly responded to this in my last question, so let's move to the next one. So beyond regulation, what role should tech developers, civil society, media, and the broader public play in building resilience against AI misinformation in elections? What practical strategies could be adopted now to strengthen detection, rapid response, and digital literacy in local communities? So let me minimize this discussion. So confidence, I know that you already partly kind of responded to these things. Do you have any additional thoughts before I throw it to the audience?
Yes, okay. Like I already stated, like in terms of the regulatory measures, we already have the laws. You understand? Like our electoral laws already outlaw distribution of fake news and materials that would undermine electoral process. So they should we should refer to that, and it should be enforced. If it is enforced, it already addresses that. Now beyond that, I think Another way, another measure that can be adopted is public education and awareness. We have civil society organizations and media that already um, enlighten and educate members of the public about our civic responsibilities. That is the need to vote for candidates of your choice. So if they can also, if these societies and if these organizations can also include digital literacy, they can also include digital literacy as part of their education, educating members of the public of the risk, the current situation we're in, the risk of deepfake technology, educating members of the public of, and also warning them against either intentionally or unintentionally distributing false videos and audios. So education, these organizations can help educate members of the public. Now, for tech developers, because these outputs are being generated with the use of products developed by the tech community. So if they can embed responsibility into their products, you understand, like we already mentioned, building safeguards. They can embed responsibility into their products, building the safeguards we already discussed earlier. I think that would help. And also, INEC can also play a key part here. The same way they educate people, the same way they promote and raise awareness of the need to vote, they should also educate people on spreading misinformation, AI generated falsehoods, and using it to undermine electoral processes. I'm not just not just doing it on the media, not just doing it, like they should go into the creeks, go into the hinterlands and actually educate people, because false information spread wider than fire.
Okay, thank you. Let me see. Do we have any member of the audience who wants to chip in at this point? Remember, you can raise your hands. Preferably, I prefer that you raise your hands, but you could also type in the chat box. So, what thoughts do you have about um, what regulators or other stakeholders could do to ensure that towards the next elections, deepfakes are not abused? Okay, let me move to the second case study. So, second case study, Dr. Akin Ifeanyi and Deepfake Identity Misuse 2024. In a statement on X, Dr. Additional warned, and I quote, these are his words: "There are unscrupulous people using AI to generate deepfakes by forcing manipulating my identity, his identity, to deceptively promote lies on non-existent news and products. They do so to deceive the unsuspecting public. They are all lies, misinformation, and fake news. The public should beware." End quote. Now, our discussion under this: how should public institutions and leaders respond when deepfake attacks threaten their credibility and what collaborative mechanisms between governments, platforms, and civil society should be put in place to restore public trust and public trust quickly and effectively. Confidence, thoughts on this?
Okay. Just like other ones, this I already mentioned certain aspects of this. First of all, we should our laws, like I stated earlier, our laws already address this. Like from the quotes you read out, is this is about manipulating identity, which is already captured by our cybercrime laws, identity fraud. You understand? Identity fraud. So we should first that should be the starting point. Start by enforcing the laws. And in enforcing the laws, in order to effectively enforce the laws, the our enforcement agencies need to be trained. You understand? Need to be trained on how to carry out effective forensic analysis. You understand how to carry out effective forensic analysis to be able to not just identify, but to be able to trace these images or videos either to the originating IP address. You understand? Either back to the originating IP address. So I feel if our enforcement agencies are trained and equipped with not just the necessary skills, but also the techniques and on how to effectively um, enforce our currently existing laws, then that is a way to start. Another thought is Mr. Adeshina is first and foremost is an individual. You understand? He's an individual, he's a data subject. And his image, whatever it is that was done, was as a result of a misuse of his data. Was as a result of a misuse of his data, which and under our data protection laws, there are certain rights that are inure to the data subject. So, and there is also a mechanism for the enforcement of such rights. There's also a mechanism for the enforcement of such rights. So, if it's possible to find out, that is this, like I said, this is my thought. It's possible to find out whatever system, whatever developer that was used to do this, did relying on data protection laws and relying on holding them accountable for not implementing measures in their system, holding them accountable for not implementing measures in their system that guards, that prevents people from altering, from making use of making malicious use of people's data. Then if these platforms and these providers can also be held accountable by our data protection regulators, then I think that is also a way to prevent other people and encourage other developers to implement these systems, to implement these safeguards in their system that will stop people from making malicious use of generating deceptive information about people.
Okay, thank you very much, Confidence. Let me see. Do we have any thoughts from the audience on this? Remember, you can raise your hands. Sorry. Raise your hand or type in the comment section. Although we said we prefer that you while we're waiting for probably someone in the audience to have any thoughts on this, Confidence, do you think there will be any difference in how these issues are treated in practice? Because I mean, Dr. Additional is a prominent public figure compared to if it was something that just happened to a random person really. But I know that there's in the USA, I think there was sometime last year, people created some nude deep fakes of Taylor Swift, and it prompted a particular state to enact a law to like introducing special penalties for creating deep fakes of celebrities. Now, do you think that there should be a certain degree of what a certain degree of higher protection if the person who's the victim is a public figure compared to if he was just an average person who is impersonated, or if an average person who was impersonated to create nudes, deep fake nudes of them? Do you think there should be a distinction?
No, I know because yes, he is a public figure, and as such, they will claim that the effects on him differ. You understand? The effects on him differ. But personally, I wouldn't say that it differs, because I would even say that as a result of the resources he has at his disposal, he's in a much better situation to manage whatever adverse effects that might arise as a result of that. But the average Tom in the street might not have a team of lawyers, might not to be able to afford pursuing a case or even afford investigations. So that is where the state should come in to be able to protect those that don't even have the resources to protect themselves. So I don't think there should be a distinction based on where the person is placed in where the person is placed the placement of the person. However, the intent focus should be on the intent and the effect of the information itself. Let's say if it's targeted at a prominent figure, and the intention is to more like destabilize the public. Understand? If it's targeted at the public figure, but the public figure is used as a tool to probably stoke ethnic tensions, or maybe pitch one country against the other, then yes, in that case, you could see that it should be treated with special consideration and special attention. But if the effect is on the individual themselves, then I don't think that there should be a distinction between how it affects the woman in the market and how it affects Dr. Additional.
Okay. Thank you very much. Because I think I like the distinction that you've made there. So ordinarily, like you said, Dr. Addition or any other public figure has the resources to, well, take care of themselves. But the average person who doesn't have the resources should be supported by the state. But then you create a distinction where if it's targeted at a public figure, but the public figure is simply, let's say, like an object, and the main target is using impersonating that person with the aim of getting a certain reaction from the public. So, like, let's say, for instance, now someone doing a deep fake of a prominent pastor in Nigeria, and it's a deep fake of that pastor, but you are doing so either to whip up a certain sentiment amongst the churchgoers or people who don't go to that church or something like that. So in that kind of instance, this is where you are saying that it should receive some kind of special treatment. Am I getting that right?
Yes, because in that situation, there is the risk of destabilizing the polity.
Okay, okay, thank
Yeah.
you. I think there's a question or comment in the comments. So let me just quickly check that. So from Formerly Services, um, let me read that. Saying, asking, how do we also hold leaders accountable if they exploit deepfakes to manipulate voters? Yes, that's very valid. And also, when leaders say a video, in quotes, isn't real, as it's quite difficult to distinguish between what's real and fake, can they be trusted? And how do citizens navigate this? I think here he's making reference to like the last dividend you made mention of earlier in the session. So there are like two queries here. How do we hold them accountable if they are the ones exploiting deepfakes to manipulate voters? And how do we navigate the last dividend?
Well, deepfake, malicious use of deepfake, like we have established, is a crime. Understand? It's a crime. So it falls back to the willingness of our enforcement agencies to enforce the laws we have against the leaders themselves. You understand? We members of the public, yes, we can raise awareness, we can cry, we can raise awareness and point out that particular misuse, but in terms of holding them, enforcing it, in terms of enforcing it, I think that falls on our enforcement agencies. That is one. But to us, I think the other way we can hold them accountable is on the poll. If a particular politician makes use of deepfake either to manipulate members of the public to be able to get them to vote the person, and you're convinced within yourself that this person is making malicious use of deepfake, then that should inform your opinion about that political leader, and should inform your choice on whether that is the person you want at the helm of affairs or not. Yeah, that is it. Then, and the question about what to do because of this issue of the liar's dividend. That's, like I said, it's a risk. That is a risk. I unfortunately I do not have an answer to that, but that is the unintended consequence of the widespread of deepfake. Is that even really genuine information can be dismissed. Even genuine information can be dismissed, can be dismissed by those at the helm of affairs as deepfake or as doctored. And what recourse do we have when they do that? Unfortunately, I don't know. You sorry, you're mute. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm sorry, I was muted. So I'm going back to the last. We have just one final case study. Let me go back to that now. So, according to an article by Nairametrics 2024 article, the NDPC reported that it is investigating 17 major data breaches across finance, technology, education, consulting, government, logistics, and gaming/lottery. These investigations stem from over 1,000 complaints of data breach. After verification, 50 of those complaints were confirmed and remedial actions were ongoing. Through these remedial actions, the government has earned about 400 million in revenue. So, our discussion here: what policy and enforcement enhancements are needed in Nigeria or similar African countries to ensure that data breach investigations lead not just to financial penalties, but to systemic improvements in data protection practices, including education, institutional capacity, accountability, and preventive controls? Now, I'm really interested in your thoughts about this conflict because I work in the data protection space, and I'm personally aware of how the NDPC is. It's almost moving like a tax agency at this point. You earlier in the earlier in the year, they said this year they are going to focus on sanctions. You probably saw in the news, like I think it was earlier this month, or was it late last month, where they put out a list of over 1,000 companies from gaming to microfinance banks to insurance who they say are non compliant to some degree. So it's like a shakedown at this point. So this is why this question is quite really critical. I really want to get your thoughts on this. How do we just make sure we just the NBC is not just another version of Nigerian customs or FIRS, and actually using enforcement to enhance compliance and improve consumer or user protection?
Yes, I think you're right. This when I saw the case study and the question, like, because this is an aspect that has been of NDPC's operation that has been a source of concern to myself as well, because and I think the priorities to them, the NDPC is not a revenue generation authority. You understand? The main mandate of the NDPC is to ensure responsible and ethical data management practices in Nigeria, and to hold controllers and processors accountable. You understand? So, but like you said, the way they are moving, I think the priority is more focused on how much they generate for the federal government, which to me is misplaced priorities. Um, so about what they can do, not what we can do, because if it's about what we can do, the best we can is to probably send them, write an open letter. If they are open to receiving suggestions from members of the public, if they have a suggestion box, you can send them email recommending. Then what should you recommend? I think it will be worth borrowing from jurisdictions with more matured data protection framework. The Europe is one, and the UK is one. There is I so much enjoy going to the website of European Data Protection Board and that of the ICO. The reason for that is, when I tell people this, I don't think I work as a DPO in the UK, but I don't think I have read the GDPR and the UK Data Protection Act more than once. I just read it, and you understand. But if you go on the website of these agencies, you could see that they make publications. They make publications. If ICO, or European Data Protection Board, is carrying out an enforcement action against a particular processor or controller, you would see they publish on their website, they publish the particular infringements, the exact provisions of the law, the exact provisions of data protection law that was infringed upon, how they infringed upon it, the investigation that was carried out. If a fine is issued, they refer back to the legislation, the rationale for that fine. Just reading sanction notices of these regulators would already, and you will already be enriched with so much knowledge about that particular law. I can assure you, like, you just read, if you go on European Data Protection Board and ICO and just focus on reading their notices, their publications, you will build so much domain knowledge about the provisions of the UK GDPR without even having to consult the UK GDPR. But what we see with the NDPC is we see a one-page publication that they have fined this company millions of naira. What is your rationale? What are the particulars of that infringement? Yes, they're processing the personal data of Nigerian citizens not in compliance with the data protection law. How? What are the particulars of your investigation? You understand? So I think they can do more. That is one aspect. They can do more into being more transparent with their sanctioning process, their investigations. If they do that, that will not only educate practitioners, that can also educate other businesses that are also committing similar infringements. Now, beyond financial penalty, you understand? Beyond financial penalty, we have enforcement notices. That is another enforcement mechanism which is provided by our data protection law in Nigeria. We have enforcement notices. Enforcement notices are where you are giving the processor or the controller, you are making some recommendations to them. You have investigated a complaint, you hold them that yes, they are not in compliance, but rather than impose a monetary penalty, you issue an enforcement notice recommending them to do ABC and setting a time frame that they need to do that and report back to you. Now, if they fail to do that, you can then take it a step further. You can then take it a step further. Then if you're imposing monetary penalty, yes, that is good. Another way is by engaging these people. By engaging these people. I can assure you that yes, the big startups in Lagos, Abuja, and the rest with strong data protection and compliance teams might have an idea of their compliance obligations under the data protection law. But not every business in Nigeria understand their responsibility under the data protection law. You understand? Under the data protection law. And this is one aspect where I am happy that the NDPC has taken a step in this aspect with this their Impact initiative, which would be a 1-year long public education program, a 1-year public education program where they will be educating members of the public on processors, both data subject, processors and controllers, on how to comply with the law. That is good. You understand? That public education is good. Educate them on how to comply. And then in your enforcement, sometimes leave monetary penalty to be the last resort. Because let's not forget, our data protection ecosystem is still very much developing. Understand? Our data protection ecosystem is still very much developing. The talent in Nigeria, not like as in, I keep saying that it is the number of persons that can call themselves data protection experts in Nigeria is only a handful. Because for you to be an expert in something, you should have been doing it at a robust length for a number of years. Our data protection ecosystem is just coming up. So some of these companies don't even have the resources, don't have the personnel in-house to comply. You understand? Rather than going ahead to issue fines, help them. You understand? Help them, tell them what to do, engage them, find out where the pain points are. You understand? Find out where the pain points are and how you as an organization can support them into complying. Now, another thing that can also be implemented, which is something the ICO is fantastic about. If you go to the ICO's website, you would see topic-specific guidance on virtually every topic in the UK data protection law. You see, just with you reading this guidance, it does not just tell you what the law says, it gives you the practical steps on how to comply and implement this in your system. We have little or no guidance from the NDPC. What we have is directives, and even the directives are just few. So if they can develop resources, guidance to the checklists, guidance checklists that should help businesses, that businesses can refer to when they are looking for information on how to comply with the law. This would help in ensuring that more businesses comply and that we move beyond just being a revenue generation agency.
Thank you so much for that confidence. I think that probably this question probably triggered a lot of people in the audience because I think we had some comments popping up here. So let me just scroll up and go through some of them here. So yes, like from here at Afrique AI, I mean, what's the point of privacy laws if big companies keep leaking data and just pay fines? Because I mean, you could just pay the fines and what's the word? Go back to business as usual if you do not work on, first of all, enforcement procedures. Sorry, work on compliance procedures before jumping at fines, and it just creates this slapstick approach where companies are just complying because we don't want NDPC trouble, so let's just decorate, let's just appoint a DPO, let's just do a DPI, so let's just do annual audits without even bothering to go back to fix those issues that probably were flagged in their annual audits. So from Bamidele, thank you for this conversation. It's timely. Can you share any example of victims of data leaks? How does legal action ensue? Do they ever get justice, or is it just about apologies? How do companies who did not comply pay or compensate victims in question and not just enforcement agencies?
Okay. The question about sharing examples for Nigeria, I'm not able to, but about other aspects of your question, I should be able to answer that. Under our data protection law, we have a private right of action. We have a private right of action under our data protection law. So if you are a data subject and you have been affected, by the data protection practices of either a controller or a processor, under the Nigerian data protection law, you can actually proceed against them, institute an action and claim damages. We know of what happened. Some of us know of what happened in the Domino's Pizza case, where someone ordered used Uber, yeah, Uber, no, Jumia, sorry, used Jumia to order pizza from Domino's Pizza, and Jumia shared the person's details with Domino's Pizza mainly for the purpose of delivering that order. And then Domino's Pizza went beyond the purpose of the sharing, to send this person direct marketing information. Now the person went to court and the court awarded him 3 million naira. You understand? So you have a private right of, as a data subject, you have a private right of action, and you can do this without recourse to the commission. You understand? Without recourse to the commission. So it's just normally like of course, our the civil litigation processes would come into play, which the data protection provides for snag notice, which as a data subject you have to, after you issue that and your grievance is not adequately addressed, you proceed to court. And you proceed to court based on your claim. If you're claiming for monetary penalty or whatever it is your claim, it is left for the court to decide what to award. But yes, as a data subject, you have a private right of action under our law.
Okay, thank you very much, Confidence, for that. So, with that, we come to the end of today's AI Forward webinar. Thank you, everyone who joined us from the beginning and to the very point. Thank you very much, Confidence, for your insights, for your thoughts. I mean, the biggest takeaway from me through this whole conversation was that a lot of responsibility actually it doesn't even fall on us, but mostly falls on the government, really, through agencies like either INEC or NDPC, who are going to be the ones to enforce rules as regards data protection or rules around curbing malicious use of deepfakes. So once again, the AI4 webinars are a monthly series, so we'll be seeing you sometime next month. Thank you for joining us. I think a feedback form will be shared with you on your thoughts on this session. With that, confidence once again. Okay, yeah, the link to the feedback form has been provided in the chat box. So once again, thank you for your time. Thank you for being part of this and confidence. Once again, I'm really grateful for your time. I would be a big fan of the work you do, and reading your bio, I knew that we were in for a good time, and you did not fail to deliver. I think the audience really agrees with me on this. So once again, thank you, and we will see you very soon. With that, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
All right. Thank you very much for having me. I enjoyed it, session. Thank you.